Hello everyone, I'm Tori St. Cyr, the Adventist Watchman. In today's video, I'm going to answer this question from this subscriber named Shamgar Khan. Shamgar says, I've listened to this twice. I don't know who Ellen White is apart from what you said about her, nor do I have any reason to believe what she says. Sounds like you believe the United States is the false prophet because of what she says. I'm struggling to understand how the lamb-like beast is the United States. Can you at all prove without Ellen that the United States is the beast? Thank you for the question, Shamgar, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. In this video, I'm going to address this question. So every once in a while, I'll answer a question. Usually I'll answer a question in the comment section, but every once in a while, a user will ask a question that I believe deserves an actual video response, some sort of official response, because I think it's a really good question, and I don't want to type all this in a comment. Okay, so I want to put together this video to answer this question for Shamgar. And it's a very, very good question and a pertinent question. And really, if you think about it, Shamgar, you're really asking two questions. The first question is in regards to Ellen White, and then the second question is regards to the how do we determine the false prophet? Okay, so let me address the Ellen White issue. And I think I've sort of mentioned this in the comments, but I want to make sure that I do it justice here on this video. Okay, so Seventh-day Adventists view the writings of Ellen White. Ellen White was one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church back in the 1800s. Okay, so Ellen White, and I'm not going to get into the history of Ellen White and who Ellen White is, but I just kind of wanted to give you this so that you'll be able to tie it in together and understand it a little bit better. Ellen White, we believe, had the gift of prophecy, and she wrote many things to the church, okay, and for the church. She never called herself a prophet. She called herself the messenger to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, a title that I agree with. Ellen White's writings have become the Seventh-day Adventist Church's official commentary. Okay, now there is a Seventh-day Adventist commentary, but in my personal opinion, that's not the official Adventist commentary. The official Adventist commentary are the writings of Ellen White. Okay, so just like many Christians believe in Matthew Henry's commentary or Ellicott's commentary. For example, if they're struggling with a particular text, they'll research, what does Matthew Henry say about it. Okay, and just like many Christians will have a set or a certain number of commentaries that they view as authoritative, we also do the same with Ellen White. Okay, so if we're struggling with a text, we'll see, well, what does Ellen White's commentary say about that? And so in that fashion, we view her writings authoritative. Okay, authoritative. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, and just to provide a little context on what my channel is about, really my channel is I'm an Adventist talking to other Adventists and trying to show them different views of prophecy, maybe views they hadn't thought of yet. And in many of my instances, I may quote something from Ellen White, showing that she agrees with how I'm presenting my view of prophecy. Okay, so sometimes you'll hear me say, something about Ellen White. So it's me talking to other Adventists. But if you have any questions, you're definitely free to ask questions, and I'll do my best to explain it. Okay, so that's just so if you hear me talking about Ellen White, just understand this channel is a conversation between me and other Adventists, but I do want other non-Adventists to join in and ask questions and challenge me if you need to, and I'm okay with that. All right, so now let's get to your question, your other question, about Revelation chapter 13, and how do I explain that the second beast in Revelation 13 is the false prophet or is the United States of America. Okay, let me rephrase that. How do I determine the false prophet in Revelation 13 is the United States of America? All right, now let's look at Revelation 12 and 13. And what I want you to do is I want you to see Revelation 12 and 13 a little bit differently than you may be seeing it. Okay, I want you to see Revelation 12 and 13 as a unit to themselves. All right. Now, Revelation 12, if you notice, Revelation 12 features a dragon. Okay, it has other symbols in it, but if you look at it closely, the main antagonist, the main villain, if I can call it that, is a dragon. Okay. Now, in Revelation 13, it features two antagonists or two villains or two main characters. In the first half, which is, I believe, is verses 1 through 10, you'll see a beast that came out of the sea. In the second half, which is verses 11 through 18, you're going to notice that it is a beast that came out of the earth. Okay. So you have the dragon that came out of the air. You have the beast in 13 that came out of the sea. And then you have the second beast that came out of the land or earth. So you have air, you have sea, and you have earth. Okay. Now, those three together, the dragon, the first beast, and the second beast, we know them as the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And we get those three titles from Revelation chapter 16. I believe it is verse 13. Don't quote me on that. I'm not looking at the Bible to see that. But we see those three powers in Revelation chapter 16. It's a threefold union of dragon, beast, and false prophet. Okay. Now, let's get to the land beast. We call the land beast the false prophet. And if you look at the characteristics of the land, even though the Revelation 13 doesn't call it the false prophet, we call it the false prophet because of the characteristics of this beast in Revelation chapter 13. I want you to notice that just like a prophet speaks for God, this second beast in Revelation 13 speaks for the dragon. Okay, think about the concepts. Remember, I think it was Elijah that brought fire down from heaven. Well, here we have this second beast bringing fire down from heaven as well. Okay. So when we look at the characteristics of this second beast, we can see that for all intents and purposes, it's a prophet. It's a false prophet. All right. Hopefully that makes sense so far. Now, as I told you before, I want you to see Revelation 12 and 13 as a unit. Okay. I often call these two chapters the gospel of the dragon, beast, and false prophet, because it's giving their story and is giving it to us from their vantage point. All right. And I often call this the bibliography of the dragon, beast, and false prophet, the gospel of the dragon, beast, and false prophet, however you want to say it. All right. But this is telling us what the dragon, the beast, and false prophet did in prophecy and what they're going to do in the future. Now, in order to identify who the false prophet is, there's only three symbols that you have to understand what they are. Number one, you have to understand what is a beast in Bible prophecy. We get the interpretation of that from the book of Daniel, Daniel 7:23. I'll read that for you. It says the fourth beast, just a part of it. It says the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom. Okay. Now that you understand what a beast is, you now have to understand the characteristics of every beast in the Bible. A beast in Bible prophecy is not just any old kingdom. If you look at the beast that came before the Roman Empire, you have Babylon, you have Medo-Persia, and you have Greece. You have to understand that all three of those powers were world powers that also persecuted the children of God in some form or fashion. All right. Some of them enslaved them, some of them captured them, whatever the case may be. All three, and then including the Roman Empire, all four enslaved, persecuted, but were all world powers in their time. Okay. So that tells us that whenever we're seeing a beast in Bible prophecy, it is always going to be a world power. Okay. As much as we like to think that, Russia is a beast in Bible prophecy, Russia is just not a world power. Russia has not persecuted the people of God. Now, maybe it could in the past or in the future, but we know that Russia is not a world power. So it always has to be a world power. If you're interpreting Bible prophecy and you're interpreting a beast as a nation, and that nation is not a world ruling power, is not a superpower, then you're likely interpreting that incorrectly. Okay. And remember, we're looking at the previous world powers to determine that. All right. Now that we understand what a beast is in Bible prophecy, we understand the characteristics of a beast in Bible prophecy. Now you have to understand, what does water represent in Bible prophecy? Revelation 17:15 says water represents peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Okay, fairly easy. The last thing we have to understand is, what does a lamb represent? Okay, in John 1:29, it references Christ. He says, "Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world." Okay, so these are the three symbols that you need to know. These are the only symbols that you need to know in order to understand how the United States represents the false prophet or the second beast in Revelation chapter 13. Okay, now this is the most important part of this video. In order to understand Bible prophecy, in order to have the correct context of Bible prophecy, you have to determine time and place. Okay? This time and place, I can't say this enough. Time and place is the number one reason why there are multiple interpretations of the same prophecy. Okay, it is why that you and I can read a text in Revelation or Daniel and we can come up with totally different interpretations. It's because we haven't established time and place, or we haven't established a correct time and place. So let's establish time and place in Revelation chapter 12, just so we can kind of get so that you can understand why time and place is so important. Okay, so now we see a dragon, and we know this dragon is Satan, but I want you to notice that this dragon, it talks about Jesus as a child. Okay, so we understand that this persecution of this child in Revelation chapter 12 is basically the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So it's the birth of Christ. And then later on in the chapter, it talks about this child was caught up to God, which it wasn't a child by that point. But we understand the concept that it was after Jesus was persecuted. So this gives us our time. We understand when Christ was born, and we understand, typically when Christ was resurrected and went to heaven. We know that this was in the 1st century. This gives us our time. We also understand that it was the Roman Empire who was the one that persecuted Christ and crucified Christ. This gives us, and we know where Christ was crucified. He was crucified in Jerusalem. This gives us our place. So in Revelation 12, at least the first few verses of Revelation 12, we understand the setting, or the time and place, is the 1st century in the Roman Empire. Do you see how we just did that? If I were to interpret this as a future time prophecy, now it can't be the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire is no longer the world power. It can't be Christ, because Christ is not living on the earth as a man. So now this skews our whole prophetic outlook of it. Okay, so now do you see how important time and place is? Okay, so I wanted to make sure that you understood that. Now, let's establish the time and place for Revelation chapter 13, and you'll see how we get the United States of America. All right. So in Revelation 13, the first beast, we see a beast coming up out of the earth. Up out of the water. And we understand that water represents peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Okay. So let's establish some time and place with the first beast of Revelation chapter 13, because this will help us determine the time and place of the second beast, or the false prophet, in Revelation 13. All right. Now, let's establish the place of this first beast of Revelation chapter 13. Okay. So now I want you to notice that this beast, or the first beast in Revelation chapter 13, had the seat from the dragon. We understand that the dragon was Imperial Rome. So that tells you the place. We are looking at still the Roman Empire, but we know that it's not the dragon, because the dragon gave this beast his seat. So it has to be a kingdom that rose up in the Roman Empire. Does that make sense? Okay. So we know we're dealing with the territory of Rome. Now, we can see here that it had the seat of Imperial Rome, and it had to rise up after the fall of Rome. So not only have we established time, but we've established place as well. Okay. Now remember, the definition of a beast is a power, a world ruling power that persecuted the children of God. Okay. So let's tally up what we know about this first beast in Revelation 13. Okay, it's a power that rose up after the fall of the pagan Roman Empire. Pagan Rome fell 476 AD by most accounts. Okay, the western part of Rome fell 476 AD. So we understand that another power rose up within the Roman Empire, which is the place. And we have to understand that the only power that I know of that fits this criteria is the papal Roman Empire. Okay, it's the only power that rose up around 538 AD in the Roman Empire, in the confines of the Roman Empire. And it had its seat was in the city of Rome, not the nation of Rome, but the city of Rome. Okay, so now we understand time and place in Revelation 13. We're dealing with at least the 5th century, at least the beginning of the 5th, or the end of the 5th century. And we understand that we're dealing with the Roman Empire. Now, the text says that the papal Roman Empire ruled for a period of 42 months. Now, this can't be 42 literal months. That would mean that the papal Roman Empire only ruled for a period of 3.5 years. Clearly here, this 42 months has to be taken as a day for a year, which is a biblical principle, okay? So instead of 42 months or 1,260 days, I want you to look at this as 1,260 years. And we can see from about the year 538 all the way to 1798, when the French captured the Pope and the Pope lost its civil power, we can see that this was the fall of the papal Roman Empire, okay? Now, in Revelation chapter 13, verse 11, we see another beast coming up. Now, we need time and place, okay? Now, notice the time has to be after the fall of the papal Roman Empire. So we're looking at a world empire that arose to power after the year 1798. Not a power that was established, a power that came into supremacy after the fall of the papal Roman Empire. Okay, so this power had to rise up after 1798. Now, we have to establish a place. The Bible says that this power rose up out of the earth. Now, there are times in prophecy where earth is just literal, but there's times when it's symbolic. Here in Revelation 13:11, it's symbolized by the beast. And so I believe that this earth is also symbolic. And when we look at the context of Revelation 17:15 that says water is people, multitudes, nations, and tongues, then we look at earth as the opposite of that. All right. So this beast rose up in a place that there weren't peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. There weren't civilizations as in the old world. And we recognize that every beast that came up prior to this beast here rose up out of water because it came up in the old world of the Middle East and Europe area part of the world. Okay. So there were civilizations in that constituted Babylon. Babylon conquered other nations. Medo-Persia conquered other nations. It was created out of other civilizations. The same goes for Greece. All of these nations, Rome, all of these nations conquered other nations. They were created out of the civilizations of other nations, okay? But this power rose up out of the earth. It rose up in a place where there weren't civilizations and nations to conquer, okay? It rose up in a sparsely populated part of the world, okay? So therefore, we're establishing the context that it didn't rise up in the old world, which is Europe and the Middle East. It rose up in a different part of the world where there weren't established civilizations, okay? Now, when we put this together, we see that it had horns that looked like a lamb, okay? So the lamb represents Christ. So now let's build a little context here. Let's build up what we've been seeing. We see a nation that rose to supremacy after the year 1798. We see a nation that came up in a part of the world that wasn't civilized. And then finally, we see a power that had characteristics of Christ. Okay? The United States is a world power that came up to supremacy around the year 1898, somewhere in there. It came into supremacy, came into its superpower status. It rose to power after the fall of the papacy, which fell in 1798. And the United States is a Christian nation. Okay. It is touted as a Protestant Christian nation. Okay. So therefore, we should be able to see that the false prophet is the United States of America. Now, the reason why this is very important, because we must understand that the prophecy declares that this beast, though it looked like a lamb, it would one day speak like a dragon. Well, what did the dragon do in Revelation chapter 12? It persecuted the saints. Okay, so that's why this prophecy is extremely important. And we must see that the false prophet is the United States of America. I know it's not a popular teaching. And you must understand, I don't hate this nation. I love this nation. I'm proud to be an American. But we have to respect what Bible prophecy is telling us. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I've answered your question. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to follow up. God bless you.